And thank you for being part of the United Nations 2022 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This is an official Bright Light Project's site event, as we all understand the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. It has done so much to our communities, to our workplace, to our health, and to our social fabric. So the big discussions now around the world is how do we as a people build back better from the coronavirus pandemic? These discussions is part of the United Nations High Political Summit with other CSO and other government entities, where we all discuss and formulate transformative solutions on how we can build back better as we all, try in our own various sectors. You will agree with me, the Sustainable Development Goals, until we localize them, until the rural woman in the village can feel the impact of the Sustainable Development Goals, they remain a high-level political discourse disconnected from the local population. I am most humbled to introduce our esteemed panel today. I'll start with Mr. Collins Ogochukwu, all the way from Calabar in Nigeria. Collins is the founder of Young African Network for Global Goals, popularly known as YANGG. Collins' love and zeal for humanity, social justice, youth, women inclusiveness towards nation building, leadership, control skill, and intellectual acquisition in Africa. Collins, you are most welcome to this platform.
Thank you so much.
And Collins, if you could be a little bit audible so we can hear you well. It looks like you're low.
Oh, really?
Yes, you're
Thank
good now.
you. Thank you. It's better now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, all the way from Cameroon, Doris Ngum. Doris is the president of Royalty World, a development-focused grassroots organization driving social change through a holistic transformation, I like that, from inside out, and managing partner of Rhino Cameroon, a social enterprise producing washable parts in the southwest region of Cameroon. Doris, you are most welcome all the way from Cameroon. Are you with us, Doris?
So honored to be on this platform. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Can you hear me? All right, then.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. And next is Goretti Echu Egbe, all the way from London, Times Square in London. Goretti is a filmmaker with a focus on creating transformative social change through visual storytelling. I like that, Goretti. She has used her platform on YouTube to create conversations around impactful and sometimes controversial issues within the African community. Goretti, it's our most esteemed blessings to have you today.
It's an honor to be here, Franco, and other panelists, and I am Lady P. Bless. Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. Next is Mrs. Thesisia Jenkins. Ms. Thesisia is a regular, on our shows, and Ms. Thesisia is the training director with Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, a nonprofit that coordinates system response to domestic violence to increase victim safety, hold perpetrators accountable, and prevent further acts of violence. She works with survivors of intimate partner violence, assisting them in taking their lives back through personal development and entrepreneurship classes. Ms. Thesisia, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. And all the way from Minnesota is Mr. Chuck Derry. Chuck has a famous quote. I love that quote. I will say it every day and I'll say it every day. Chuck says, male silence supports male violence.
True.
So, Chuck has worked to end men's violence against women since 1983. In 1994, he co-founded the Gender Violence Institute in Clearwater, Minnesota, and through that organization provides training and technical assistance nationally and internationally on the dynamics of domestic violence, criminal justice reform, and effective coordinated community responses to domestic violence. Mr. Chuck, it is our most esteemed pleasure to have you today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful,
It's
wonderful.
great group.
Thank you so much. And my partner in crime, Lady B Bless of the Lady B Bless Humanitarian Foundation, someone I've been blessed to work with for over 15 years. Lady B Bless is all the way from the Caribbean, but I tell you, she's the most African woman I've met in my entire life. Please help me welcome Lady B Bless, Executive Director of the Lady B Bless Humanitarian Foundation.
You. Thank you so much, Franco. It's always a pleasure to work with you. And like you say, 15 years, it's like a relationship already. So he's my humanitarian husband.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So we'll dive straight to the questions, Lady B. If you can go ahead and take out the first questions, that would be great.
Thank you, everyone. And it's just a pleasure to have everyone here. And I just want to say thank you to our esteemed panelists for joining us. As you know, the High Level Political Forum started in 2016 after the release of the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN in 2015. And every year, after that, they've held the high-level political forum on the SDGs to ensure that we are indeed making progress with the SDGs. So this event that we're doing today is the side event of the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development 2022. We are going to discuss some of the progress and some of the setbacks that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the SDGs. So the first question and the first SDG that we're discussing today is SDG number 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So target 4.1, so by 2030, we are to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, quality primary and secondary education leading to relevant and effective learning experience for boys and girls. We don't want to forget the boys. So the question is to everyone here, the pandemic, as we know, has pushed back the SDGs some 10 to 15 years, and some are even saying 20. So, especially in the developing countries, what are some of your opinions? What are some of the ways that you feel that we can come now and build back better in the domain of education, especially for primary and secondary students?
Wonderful, wonderful. And on this question, Lady B, thank you. I would like Ms. Doris to go first from Royalty World Cameroon.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you all so much. Amazing panel. Such an honor again to be here. And like Franco said, that if the SDGs are not a reality to the grassroots woman, then it's still a political thing we're talking about. And, you know, before the pandemic, that was in 2018, I guess, we I work in the grassroots. So I work in the community where, you see the poorest of the poor, where teenage pregnancy, crime, and all of that is a deep reality. And in one of our campaigns for menstrual health hygiene, going out to actually reach out to girls who could not afford pads, we started doing a survey, and we discovered that that was not the only problem that we had in our community. The biggest thing was that almost every girl was out of school. And in the little survey that we carried out in the local community in Bolifamba and Boya, the southwest region of Cameroon, we understood that 8 out of 10 girls that we spoke with were out of school. So you can say that if the world is 15 years back, then Africa is about 50 years back. So that's the reality of most communities, the reflection of most of the communities here in Africa. So it's really a problem. And one of the issues is affordability. Parents cannot afford tuition. And now, after the pandemic, one of the things that happened in the pandemic is that most people, lost their daily, their jobs, and maybe small income generating activities that they were having because of all the restrictions and everything. So people were not able to earn income like they would before the crisis. And then in Cameroon, it's an even worse situation because we're currently going through a socio-political crisis in the southwest region. So all of those things put together has put so much pressure on households where, first of all, income is a huge problem. So many young girls, like I just said, 8 out of 10, that was in 2018, 2019, we carried out that survey. So now I think things are getting better now, but then that was the situation. And we had to launch a scholarship program to help most of these girls go back to school, because if we're talking about sustainable development goals, we're talking about 2030. Education happens to be the foundation of everything. It's the foundation on which every other goal is going to be achieved. And if we did not handle that, as a community development organization, we found that that was just a very, very crucial issue. So one of the things that we have done, and I believe is also one of the things that it's very important, apart from offering scholarships, we offered scholarships to students to go back to school. But we discovered that their competencies were very, very low. Most of them could not make it. Their exams were failing their exams because they've been out of school for so long. And so it's the basic literacy is an issue. Most girls cannot even read properly. So we had to start a community school in what we are calling the coaching academy. So we're focusing on basic things like literacy for students to get that. So basically, if a child can read, then they can be able to continue their education. So that's one of the things that we're really focusing on, bringing education at the grassroots, not waiting for them, not necessarily depending on schools. So we are trying to build a lot of community schools. So bringing education to the grassroots, to the students themselves, because if they don't, and most of them don't even understand what the SDGs are. So that's also one of the things that we emphasize, and we focus a lot on mentoring, because we believe that these girls are leaders, and we're not just focusing on girls, we're focusing on the boys as well, because it's also an issue. Yeah. So I think for now, one of the biggest things is just community schools. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. Bringing education to the grassroots. It's one of the ways we can build back better from the coronavirus, especially in rural communities in Africa. Thank you so much, Doris. And next, we'll hear from Collins. Collins, are you with us? What is your perspective on this?
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening. I don't know if I'm audible enough this time.
There you are.
Thank you. Now, education, of course, is the bedrock upon which every nation is built. And taking full consideration of the fact that the pandemic has actually shown Africans that we need to build more when it comes to our educational standard, the equitability and then quality of the educational status. We have to concentrate more on that. But I would want to talk a little bit about the quality of the kind of education we need in Africa. We should, of course, incorporate digital measures for teaching and learning in Africa. Statistics equally show that internet penetration in Africa is approximately 40%, with 700 million of words, 3.7 billion unconnected people living in Africa. That is an embarrassing statistic, but we just have to say the truth. Therefore, how can we connect Africa? Regardless of the fact that World Bank estimated that we need 100 billion
Look like Collins is kind of frozen.
ways to help ourselves.
Okay.
He's back.
Is it back? Is it back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Going with the fact that United Nations, of course, the World Bank estimated the 100 billion funds to help bring Africa to become connected and compete favorably with the outside world. We should consider, of course, making internet data bundle more affordable, sustainable, and strong. And then we need to bring the telecommunication companies at the forefront of this agenda. We have to consciously build our own, because the pandemic happened. Several nations, I wouldn't talk more about the Western world, I would want to base more in Africa. Several nations, their young people were still accessing educational materials online, but here in Africa, most schools were entirely shut down. So we need to talk about making education much more virtual, bringing in technology into our educational system. Then why affordability? We understand the level of poverty in several African nations. We understand that some persons have to live, some families have to live below $5 per day. And this is a disheartening situation. So telecom communications, we need to push them to ensure that we have affordable data bundle where young people can access the internet and make researches to help their life. And then we'll talk about sustainability. Around here in Africa, you find out that there are some telecom companies that will tell you that the data is for 1 month, but often and on, you see yourself buying the same data on weekly basis, whereby this same data the price tag was stationed to be for 1 month. So we need to talk about some of this. We need to engage the telecom communications. And then we'll talk about the strength of these mobile networks. I still recount when I went to Cameroon for an internship in 2019. I went to Sam Milima in Akomendibi, to be precise. I went on internship to teach English in the rural area. And of course, for 1 month that I spent in Cameroon, I was unable to connect with my family in Nigeria. So that is to say, we cannot bring technology into the educational system when we don't talk about the affordability, sustainability, and the strength of these mobile networks. We need to engage these telecom companies to help us build a society where everyone is connected. The world is a global space, and if we need young people to access quality education for the 21st century global market, then we need to talk about making it more technologically based. Now, I have a model. Of course, I have a model I would want to present to each and every one person in this place. Now,
Collins,
Yes,
Collins, no problem. We have another question on SDG 4. I think that would be a good opportunity for you to present that model. If I hear you well, bridging the digital divide will help a lot in building back better, because the pandemic has shown in the developing countries, it deepened our inequalities because children could not access education while children in the most developed countries were accessing education. Thank you so much. And next, Goretti, can you take a piece on this, Goretti? How can we be back better in the domain of making sure that ensure girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education?
How do we build back? I think the conversation should be, how do we build forward better? Because we've been trying to build back better since the COVID, since the pandemic. Sorry, just give me a minute. Since the COVID, the lockdown lifted, and it has shown so many gaps, just like Collins was saying about accessible and quality education. I think that, Collins, before we even get to that point of accessing quality education from the telecoms or through the media of the internet, we need to, first of all, like Doris said, acknowledge what is on the ground. What kind of education are they even receiving at that level of, let's say, even within the national education system. What kind of education is being offered to them? Is it good enough education that can actually lift them out of poverty? Are we just talking about teaching them? I know in our time, and I'm always going to go back to when I was young, because the education that we had, for example, history lessons, we weren't even taught about little things like how our people came to be, how our countries came to be, understanding the topography of our own land.
Correct.
If we start from there, understanding who we are, what kind of education, sometimes it's not always what is passed down from the UN and all the other multinationals and international bodies that will work for us. We can redefine the way Africa treats education, and it should be education that could be comparable on an international level, but it starts from the point where we understand who we are as a people, what we can contribute to the world, and then we now try to meet the world. So in my research, there's a lot of talk around, oh, we need quality education, but I feel like it's from the top down. It's quality education that's imposed on us, whereas I think that it is time for us to look into, as it's been seen in Rwanda and other countries. I mean, Rwanda right now is like a beacon for a model for the rest of us to follow when it comes to sustainability. We should really look and understand our people, what works for the African, the Nigerian, the Cameroonian, the Ghanaian, what works in that context, how we can help the grassroots woman to understand why this education is more, sending her child to school is more valuable than, not more valuable, but equally as valuable as sending the child to go work on the farm. If we come from that level, I feel like we stand a better chance of talking from a place of confidence and really knowing what value as Africans we bring to the rest of the world.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So you're going back to Doris. Doris was saying, let's first of all try to create little incubators that will act, as that will act as educational spheres for our young people. Without that, we cannot talk about quality education when we don't really have the basic materials to thrive. That is very important in the developing world. And with that, we move over straight to question number 2, which addresses SDG number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. You see, there's been a lot of talk about unpaid domestic work. How can we value that, right? If you look at the effects of the pandemic, what happened? The people who suffered most are those in the retail industry, okay? Those who work in high sky-rise buildings, they could afford working from home because they could use a computer. But those who are the cleaners, those who are the shopkeepers, those who are doing DoorDash, those who are doing Uber, they could not do that. So the pandemic had a disproportionate effect, affecting low-income people the most. And if you look at within this group, women constitute a majority of this group. So I'm going to start with Ms. Thesisia. I know you do a lot of work when it comes to harnessing the power and trying to provide entrepreneurship, for local women. So what in your opinion, how can the public and the private sector value unpaid domestic work, and how could this contribute in building back better after the pandemic?
Thank you for the question, Franco. So I decided to do a little research about this whole idea of unpaid domestic work. And in doing the research, it talked really about the work that women do that often is not valued, such as, quote unquote, the housewife.
Yes.
Right?
Wonderful.
That provides for the children, that takes care of their parents, the in-laws, if they're married, and all the things that they provide. Here's the reality is that women, whether they are married or unmarried, that they often are the ones who are cleaning the house. They're the housekeeper. They are the cook. They are the medical caregiver. And we saw this definitely during the pandemic. So just being very clear about what is unpaid domestic workers, that it is those individuals who keep the households going, which traditionally is women. And I'm going to get to answering the question, but I just found this so fascinating in doing the research. And here's what I found is that on an international basis, that approximately 10.9 trillion, let's say that one more time,
Wow.
$10.9 trillion is what is a woman's worth in this world that they are not being paid. So that's on one end of the spectrum. Now, going around to the fact that how did the pandemic affect women overall? In our program through the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council here, what we found is that many women were having to make the choice to stay at home because of COVID. Many women lost their jobs. And here's what, to be very clear, that intimate partner violence affects women from every spectrum, from 6 figures all the way down to no income at all. However, those who were severely impacted were those ones who were definitely at a certain threshold economically, maybe 30,000 and below, those individuals who had not been allowed to engage in the workforce as part of the tactics that abusers use for power and control. And so many of these women who were the head of household because they had left the abuser were now faced in many times losing their job because what? They were relegated to positions such as housekeeping, working in retail. And when all of those things shut down during that initial part of COVID, they were no longer had a job in retail. They no longer had a job at fast food because those places shut down initially. So now you have a woman who is head of household, who is completely depending on her income alone, who now have no money. And the fact that they were working in retail, the fact that they were working in fast food and those types of positions that do not have quote unquote paid time off and other additional benefits, they were thrust deeper into poverty. And by being thrust deeper into poverty, I'm going to wrap up so the other panelists can talk, is that housing was the most impacted.
Yes.
So talking about here in Houston, to find affordable housing, $1,500 is probably the average for rent. Now imagine if you were the head of household, you have no incoming in, and you have one, and heaven forbid, if you have 3, 5, 6, or 7 children.
Exactly.
What is that impact? So talking about how can businesses, I think we need to start looking at having particular benefits for women who are in the workforce, having that paid time off, looking at ways that we can create ways for women to have better retirement plans. As a woman of a certain age, I'm looking at that now and it's like, no one ever really talked to me about the time when the time comes that I'm not going to quote unquote be able to work. So all of those things I think are conversations worth having.
Wonderful. $10.9 trillion is the value of unpaid work that is not within the mainstream. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Thesisia. That was great. That was great. Moving over to Mr. Chuck. I know you have a great experience when it comes to social construction of gender violence and inequality. How does this idea of unpaid work, how moving forward, what do you think could be done with this idea if we are serious about building forward after the pandemic?
Well, I'm kind of focusing on this, on the response, on speaking to men, and asking men specifically in their private lives, in their homes, to accept the fact that women's unpaid domestic work has the same value as men's paid work, as it represents, it's this combined effort to create a sustainable and safe life for themselves and for the children and other family members, right?
Yes.
And so acknowledging that that value is the same as the paid work that he's doing, also moves us into this financial assets, that those assets should be shared equally, that
Wonderful.
They should share a bank account. It shouldn't just be his and he doesn't control all the money. No, they both do. And land ownership of the house or the land, the farm, it should be shared. And also the decision-making process about the finances in the home. He doesn't make all the decisions. He has to be willing to share that with her. Even though all the cultural messages say, no, guy's the head of the house. But that hurts women. Do we care about women and children's lives? That's what we ask men. And so if we care, we need to equalize this unpaid work. And men need to equally share the domestic work that needs to be done in the home, right? So cleaning the house, right? Taking care of the kids, doing repairs, doing the yard work, garden, laundry, cooking, washing dishes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because, and it was interesting because a recent United Nations report, Progress Towards Sustainable Development Goals, the 2022 report states that women are doing 2.5 times more domestic work than men. 2.5 times more work than we do. So that has to change. You know, so I come home after 8 or 10 hour day, I'm a guy, I come home and I get to just sit down on the couch and relax. Meanwhile, she's been working 8 to 10 hours, either outside the house or in the house. And now she has to keep working by making me dinner and doing the dishes and then taking care of the kids and giving them baths and helping them with their homework and putting them to bed. So she's going into 12 and 14 hours. And it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And so men have to be willing to value women's work because we've been taught globally to dismiss it. We have to be willing, not taught, willing to accept it as the same value as our own, and then equalize the work that's done in that house and in that, you know, in their community as well, so that it's equal. And then again, sharing her decision-making power around sharing assets and sharing her decision-making power around the money. Because just because he's working for money doesn't devalue her work, non-paid work, because they're both valuable. But he happens to be getting paid, but they should both be able to make decisions about how that money is spent, where it's spent, and she should have also access to the assets in the same way he does. That's my
and thank you, so Chuck. I think you have hit home a very important point. In a patriarchal situation, community like most of the developing community, most of sub-Saharan Africa, it is true, because when it comes to assets, when it comes to hereditary, what happens is the male child always has the opportunity to get everything from the parents. But I think, you know, with globalization, I think the culture is kind of changing a little bit, where parents are now understanding that the male child is equally as important as the female child. So I think that culture is kind of shifting a little bit. Lady B, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, yeah, it really is shifting because of a new understanding in that with the equality movement that's going on. But I wanted to touch on something that Ms. Jenkins said with the women in the housing issue in Houston. It's worldwide. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that during the pandemic, we lost more men than we did women. For every 100 women that died in the pandemic, 180 men died. So over 85,000 men are gone or from the earth, and a lot of women are left holding the bag. So the situation right now for women is very, very dire. We are suffering more than ever because of the fact that the men are no longer here. The food shortages are coming. The women have no work. The children are hungry. There's baby food formula shortage and everything. So it is a dire, dire, dire situation that's going on with the women now within the household. And I think that's something that no one talks about, and it's something that needs to be highlighted. And I'm very happy that Ms. Jenkins brought up that point. Thank you.
Wonderful, Lady B. Wonderful so much. Wonderful, wonderful panelists. If you're tuning in, we're live at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development 2022. This is an official side event. We are talking about, you know, the effects of the pandemic and how we can constructively build back better in our local communities. We often say development has a trigger effect from the grassroots to the top, and not from the top to the grassroots. So it's very important that we recognize and localize the SDGs to empower our local entrepreneurs. So because they are the main incubators, they provide the resources through which we can build better. They provide the rural women fits the urban cities. So at this point, I would like to call on our keynote speaker if he's available. Mr. Peter, are you with us?
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, wonderful. Can you turn your video on, please? Yeah, can you turn your video so we can see you, please? Wonderful.
Am I on?
Maybe we do his bio while he works on the video.
Yes, wonderful. Mr. Peter Ngutayong, he's founder and executive director and coach and trainer at the Tayong Center for Leadership and Development in Cameroon, a leadership think tank with objective to providing leadership, management, communication, career development, motivational speaking, and soft skills development for institutions in Cameroon and abroad. As executive coach and trainer, he has expertly led and undertaken some key initiatives. I will just cite one of them. Over his 15 years experience with different United Nations organizations, with different United Nations bodies, Mr. Peter spearheaded the development of the first communication unit for post-conflict Sierra Leone, providing on-demand communication, support, and managerial advisory services to the UNDP and other UN programs, including effectively controlling visibility at the local and international levels while managing a $1+ million program budgets across different countries. It is our most esteemed pleasure to have you today, Mr. Peter Ngutayong. Thank you so much.
I'm honored. I'm honored. I didn't know you were talking about me. I was just listening. I was just watching and asking where you got the information from. I was just watching.
And Mr. Peter, before you go, I think your camera, I think you need to sit up more so people can see you.
All right, just get down.
Oh, okay. Or let me make the view to the speaker then.
Perfect. Perfect, Mr. Peter.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Peter.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can I go ahead with my keynote address?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a super great pleasure to be able to give you my keynote address on such a wonderful topic and such a wonderful moment like it's happening now in the world. Building back better. Nothing is better than building back better. You know, I wrote a speech, to be fair with you guys, but when I listen to you all talk, I'm overtaken by my emotion even to read my speech, because I think some of you have dug into my speech and said things which I was going to say. But still, I'll read the speech because it's an official duty which I worked so hard on for the last 1 week. So I want to say this. Let me begin by thanking Bright Lights Project and its partner, the Lady Be Blessed Humanitarian Foundation, for nominating me to present the keynote address. I am grateful. Let me recall that it was the best news for decades when in 2000, the year 2000, world leaders acknowledged that the most urgent matter at the dawn of the new century was to put an end to poverty, and that the world has the resources and the know-how to do so. When the UN Millennium Declaration, the international community finally achieved the political consensus on what should be done by whom after years of disagreement between non-governmental organizations and governments, between the international financial institutions and the United Nations system, and between the North and the South. Leaders repeatedly declared that they would spare no effort to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, which range from halving extreme poverty to halting the spread of HIV, AIDS, and providing universal primary education, all by the target date 2015. The MDGs had their own limitations. They did not capture other commitments made in the Millennium Declaration on governance, transparency, and participation, and human rights, which are not simple to measure, but are essential for the achievement of the goals. Furthermore, while the first 7 MDGs reflected the international consensus derived from earlier UN conferences, the content of the MDGs 8 involved rich countries' commitments. Rich countries' commitment was only discussed and agreed internationally in order for following the Millennium Summit. Now, I want to say this. Today, we are barely 8 years to the total implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. In spite of the effect of COVID-19, running 3 years on and continuing to carry out devastating effects worldwide. Should we allow it to fail? That's the question I'm asking every one of us. I say no, no, and no again. Then what can we do to trigger the success that is expected from this great strategy? Building back better from the coronavirus disease, COVID, which advancing the full implementation of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development would mean the following. Would mean the following should be done. The first I'm talking, because now I'm making suggestions. Open up the conversation. We've got to open up the conversation, not just limit it only to the high stakeholders, the United Nations, the governments. I worked with the UN for many years. I was a champion of the MDGs when it was the time, but I think the SDGs is almost going the way the MDGs went. We need to open up the conversation and bring every voice to the game. That is my first suggestion. Bring every voice to the game, whether it's talking about gender equality, whether it's talking about fighting poverty, whether it's talking about building partnerships. The conversation must be very open. Nobody should be left apart. I also suggested that we need to move from traditional mass media communications, which is what I see, to having what we call town hall meetings, get everybody in our school system involved. I am shocked, I'm really shocked that even in Cameroon where I am, I hear very little schools, very little authorities talk about this. Meanwhile, we are just 8 years to the end of the strategy to be able to make the strategy work. So we have to open the conversation. Let it become a national cry. Let everybody speak about it. I don't get enough voices in the game, and that's where my problem lies. They need to build they need to build new priorities, leadership to guide the implementation. We need leaders. I'm a leadership coach that you mentioned. We need to build influencers at all levels who can push forward these different goals and get the community see it as an example. We need examples. We don't have to have big meetings in New York where people sit and talk around tables and then they come out there and they are happy and, and praising each other for a job well done. No, we need to be committed. We need to be consistent. We need to be forward looking. We need to set our strategies straight. We need to have our goals clear. If we don't do that, we are losing it. and we are just 8 years to come. We don't know what pandemic is going to be for us. So we need to improve the conversation, as I've said. We need to get everybody on the game. I would conclude by saying, promoting international trade amongst all levels of our society, especially with African countries, and help them increase their exports is all part of achieving the universal rule based on equitable trading system and fair and open benefits to everyone. Once more, I want to thank you all for my speech. Like I said, I prepared a speech, but after listening to all of you, I've heard a lot of more exciting things than I even put in my paper. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to continue listening because I think this conversation has to continue. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Let's share him up. Let's share him up, please. Let's share him up, please. Wonderful, 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 Mr. Tayong. It's a great. I had some very deep insights from you. We must be able to engage at the local level.
Yes.
You know, until we localize the SDGs, they become a higher level political discourse at the United Nations headquarters, completely disconnected from the local men and women who are the incubators and the breadwinners driving local action towards economic development. Wonderful, 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 Mr. Tayong.
Yes.
And one you touched about SDG number 17 when you talked about increased exports for developing countries, Mr. Tayong. So how so far? What do you think? What do you think? How can that increase in helping developing countries by giving them an opportunity to increase exports, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if we are given the opportunity, because I'm talking also as an entrepreneur now, I've changed my cap. If we are given opportunities to finish our products before exporting them, giving them more value will give us more income. Will give us more income, and we can do better things. What you see in my country today, Cameroon, is we export timber, not process. We export cocoa, coffee, every other thing. Why don't the industrial countries come up with support so that we can produce also finalize goods which we can export to them, and they can give us money to be able to improve trade. Trade should be a win-win affair. It should be a win-win affair. It should not be a winner takes it all. It should not be a zero-sum game. People must go to trade with the feeling that it's a win-win, not a win-lose or a lose-lose. And that is the problem in our continent. Because we sell, but we are not happy because we need the money. But we don't sell because we are excited. I think the international community should address that issue critically. And I mean it because I have seen situations where, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the UN has to really deep into this SDG 17 and get it work, because our countries are not getting the benefits of what they produce.
Wonderful.
And until we start getting that benefit, I don't think we'll ever get out of the poverty we're talking of, and I don't think we will really meet the development we are seeking.
Wonderful, Mr. Tayong. Wonderful, so much. But got you very well. If we have an opportunity to add value to our exports, then we will be building a better GDP, and we'll be able to build back better from the coronavirus pandemic. Exactly. Wonderful. Let me go back to Ms. Goretti. Let me go back to you, Ms. Goretti. I'm going to go back to question number 2, Ms. Goretti, back on the idea of unpaid domestic work. So, how does what do you think could be a contribution from the local woman in the village? How do you think that, you know, valuing that domestic work and giving it a value, how do you think that could contribute to nation building or to economic development?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Tayong, it was really an honor listening to you and learning so much from you, especially as someone who served in the UN for so many years. So thank you very much for your contribution. But there is, in my research, I found I read a lot about investing in childcare programs. In investing in quality childcare programs, and I go back to what Doris was saying earlier about what did she call it? Community schools. The local woman in the rural area who works on her farm, what is the biggest obstacle that she faces? What is the biggest obstruction? What she faces is that it's children. If she's a mother, especially most local women are mothers, where does she keep her child? Where does she take a baby? Does she have to, when she puts a baby on her back to go to the farm? How does that impact her output? How does that impact her day from start to finish? What time she wakes up? When we begin to look at those kind of hindrances that impact her economic output, we stop just focusing on what her contribution could be to the GDP, because we do know that unpaid, or what we call unpaid care work, like Ms. Thesisia said, it's if it's valued economically, it's it's in the trillions.
Yes.
So definitely she contributes to the economy, but with those hindrances that she faces, how can she be helped to make sure that that is not something that she's thinking about, so that she can go straight to work? So I'm thinking there's so many situations where investing in childcare programs has proven successful, because the the International Labour Organization, did a research that found that if you invest in quality, not just childcare programs, but quality childcare programs for the rural area, and these are policy reforms that have to come from like the government and any local organization that's benefiting from whatever that local woman is producing. If we invest in quality childcare programs, we can globally reduce gender pay gap by, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and the global south, as we like to call it, by up to 22%.
Wow.
22%. So
wow.
If we think about the hindrances that we start from that, what are the things that hinder her every day so that her output is at maximum? If we address that, as is been shown to work even in the global north, then we make the woman's work quantifiable and we make it more valuable to the economy.
Wow, that's that. You know, Goretti, I really want to thank you, because few of us look at it from that perspective, right? We look at it from the very high level, but you forget that one of the key impediments, one of the key things that that stops a woman from unleashing her full potential is the fact that it's not only domestic work, but she also has to multitask with the baby, taking the baby all around. So if she can be given some help, I think that will go a long way. Wonderful impact. We are live at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, an official side event by Bright Light Projects, partner, Let It Be Blessed. It's wonderful. And so Let It Be Blessed. Let me let you go on question number 4, please.
Okay, I had a point to make before we move on to question number 4. I just wanted to address what Mr. Peters said, and I totally agree with him. There's a disconnect between the grassroots and those in the higher level. And also it's misinformation and not being informed. Just what Colin spoke about, the digital divide and digital education not getting to our people on a grassroots level. There is a process and a procedure that's set up by the United Nations to report progress on sustainable development. However, those on a grassroots level, they're not getting this information. The Sustainable Development Goal high level that we are talking about right now, representative from each country will be at the UN from the 15th to the 5th to the 15th, reporting on their country's progress on the SDG. However, if the grassroots organization have not submitted their reports, their voice will not be heard. And I think a lot of people on the grassroots level do not know that the UN calls for voluntary report on your advancement, your implementation of the SDGs. And I think a lot of disconnect is going on because the education is lacking or the people on the grassroots level are not being totally informed, because of course everything now is digital. I get 1 million emails from the United Nations because I am plugged in. What about
Wonderful.
those that's in the villages that's not plugged in?
Wonderful.
So Mr. Peter is absolutely correct. There is this lack of information that's not getting to the higher level
Wonderful.
about what's going on the lower level as far as
Wonderful.
the grassroots organizations are concerned. And I
Wonderful.
think for us, we need to really work on that to getting the information out. So everybody, from the women in the rural village to the ones in the offices to the ones in the big corporation, that their voice, will be heard. So I just
Wonderful.
wanted to put that out there. We could also work on getting that knowledge out, that we could do reports, our voice could be heard, and we could get this on to the end. So we move on to question number 4. Go ahead, Franco.
No, number 3. Let it be question number 3. Thank you.
Oh,
Question
3, sorry.
Question number 3.
Now, question number 3 is SDG 4, which is inclusive an equitable quality education to promote lifelong learning. For that, so most experts argue that our education system in Africa must be revamped to include a greater emphasis on technology and skill training as a way in building forward. And I like building forward, as Ms. Doris says. Do you think our educational system or curriculum need to be revamped, to revised, or to lay emphasis on technical education, innovation, as we strive to build an ecosystem of job creation rather than job seekers? So in other words, are we building job seekers or are we building entrepreneurs? So definitely that's the question today.
Because target 4.4 of SDG 4 talks about entrepreneurship. Doris, I'll let Doris answer first. Doris, let's hear from you.
Yeah, that is, I couldn't agree more with that. I left the UK in 2012 and moved to Cameroon. And when I came, I had the opportunity to lecture entrepreneurship in the university, in the professional school. And I was very, very quick to discover that, I was not going to go with the curriculum they gave me. The curriculum they gave me, I found that, it was focusing more on tertiary than on the developing. We are a developing country. We are not a tertiary country. So, our educational system focuses on general education, geography, literature. How does that help us? How does that help the local farmer to understand how to farm better? And Mr. Peter talked about us finishing our production, coming to a place where we can produce finished goods. So we stop being exploited. We stop working too hard and send our cocoa and send our wood. We need to stop that. We need to start producing products that can be competitive at the global level. And how would we do that if we focus on learning geography, history in our schools, and we don't do any form of vocational training? So again, I keep saying we must go back to the grassroots. It is time for us to be contextual in our education and stop assuming and using curriculums that have been imposed on us from a system that has nothing to do with our system. They don't know, they don't understand our realities on the ground. We need to educate the woman on the ground to understand how to transform cocoa into chocolate and stop buying chocolate, stop sending cocoa abroad for a few pence and then receiving the chocolate here and buying it for hundreds of pounds. That's what's killing our economy. That's what's keeping Africa in systemic poverty. We will stay in systemic poverty. It's going to continue being a cycle until we contextualize our education. And I say 3 things. We're going to focus on skill building, critical thinking, and the entrepreneurial spirit. That's what we need to focus on. And I say the entrepreneurial spirit, I don't really mean necessarily starting your own business, but we need to equip a youth that gets into a business or an organization and work for that organization as an entrepreneur with the mindset of thinking, how can I add value? And not just the job, government job mentality that we have in Cameroon now. We have a set of youth that have been released that get into a job and they don't understand what it means to come to work on time because of the way our educational system has brought us up. So there needs to be a total revamp in our educational system if we have to go anywhere. Vocational training is the way to go. Focus on skill, focus on critical thinking and the entrepreneurial spirit.
Wonderful, Doris. Wonderful, Doris. Wonderful, Doris. Critical thinking skills give our local women the opportunity to be entrepreneurs so they can transform our low products and add value, just like our keynote speaker said. Mr. Collins, what do you think in your perspective, our educational system, looking forward, what should be done?
Okay, thank you so much. I think Doris really did an interesting job there. The curriculum we have in Africa helped us to gain independence, but we need a curriculum that will help us stay independent. Independence in the state of job creation, wealth creation, local building. In my country, Nigeria, it's a shame to say that we have crude oil in abundance, but we transport this same crude oil to the Western world to be refined, and then we buy it back. And then when you are buying it back, you have to consider the exchange rate. You see that we are running deficits on a yearly basis. That is to say that we need a curriculum that will help young people understand the basis of creating wealth by themselves. And just as I was pointing out the last time about bringing technology into our system of teaching and learning, young people, the young people we have this time are very smart. Very smart to the point that, of course, we have been tagged a nation that defraud other people because they have an interesting and smart way of using their laptops. But this is to tell you that the problem is not about Africans, it's about getting a curriculum that will harness all these potentials and bring them to a fruitful and more functional use. And then I want to recommend, like in every question, I try to bring up a recommendation. I want to recommend that Africans, we need to adopt the Igbo entrepreneurship system into our curriculum. Now, this Igbo entrepreneurship system is an unpaid business apprenticeship or incubator model that lets young people learn business skills and methods for a certain number of years. And at the end, they are provided with capital infusion and support to start their own business. When we have this kind of mentorship program where young people are attached to big firms, big companies, they can work free of charge, have this little understanding about how to grow a business, what makes a business stand, how to grow businesses from the grassroots. It will help them to prepare for the future. And if we are ever going to build the Africa that everybody will be happy with, then people need to understand that wealth creation is important. Now, the Igbo apprenticeship system is the largest business incubator in the world. And we have the system already has been approved by Harvard Business Review and is now included in the curriculum of Harvard. So why can't we have this same system in Africa? The problem we have is not on the youths. The problem we have is the curriculum. Our curriculum is just literature-based. Our curriculum is just about writing, learning, giving the information, but the right application of this knowledge has to be taught. And we have to start teaching from the grassroots. People need to understand that their potentials is not just locked down to passing exams, going for scholarships, writing tests. It has to come out. We have to apply this same knowledge. And if we look closely in the global sphere about young people who own several conglomerates, we find out that most of them are school dropouts. Most of them are not even graduates. That is to say, we need to build a platform where people understand their place in education, understand their place in the society, and of course, help to groom them to become better and apply their knowledge.
Wonderful, wonderful, Collins. If I understand you better, what you're saying is there needs to be enough mentorship to mentor our young people, right? Because Correct. How can we build an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, an ecosystem of builders, when we lack the basic infrastructure, like the mentors to mentor them? Wonderful, yes. Wonderful.
Correct.
I'm going to move to the next question. But Peter, you're going to stay because I have very interesting questions to you about debt restructuring and debt management and how for heavily poor indebted countries. I'm going to move over now to Chuck. Mr. Chuck, question number 4, SDG number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Target 5.5 talks about ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic, and public life. Chuck, do you think it is time for the world to acknowledge and do more in terms of providing more support and opportunities for women in both political life and in public life?
Absolutely. I mean, just even listening to what Collins was saying about education, and we're talking about mentorship and stuff. When you say mentorship, what comes to mind in your brain? A male or a female? Do we have to clarify that we're talking about female mentorships and male mentorship and female owners, right? How do we have to continue to embed this language that's very gender specific? Now, if we're going to talk about women being in leadership roles and moving forward with equality, one of the first things, there's several things to do, of course. One of the first things to do is that we have to have effective interventions for ending men's sexual and domestic violence against women. 1 in 3 to 1 in 2 women globally have experienced being beaten by the man she's in relationship with,
yes,
and or being sexually assaulted. And I'm also talking about sexual exploitation. That has to end as well. The prostitution and sex trafficking of women and girls and boys. And so again, in 2014, the United Nations gave the Gold Award to the Domestic Abuse Intervention Program in Duluth, Minnesota, for having the most effective policy model in the world to deal with domestic violence. And that is a coordinated community response project where you are coordinating, and Thesisia is doing this work as well, and I have as well, where you coordinate the criminal justice system and the advocacy programs in how do you respond effectively to domestic violence cases where you're highlighting victim safety and offender accountability.
Wow.
Because that is what will make the change, offender accountability, that there are consequences. Because there's major benefits for men to be violent against their wives. I worked with men who batter for 10 years. And I asked them the benefits, and we filled a 4-foot by 8-foot blackboard of all the benefits that they got from being violent with their wife. And then we ran out of space. So and so we need to have effective interventions, because violence is the foundation of oppression, all kinds of oppression. If other things don't work, that works.
Yes.
We've seen that historically. So we need to utilize effective interventions, and the Domestic Abuse Intervention Program website has the Blueprint for Safety, it's called, and it's downloadable and it's free, and it's a very comprehensive interagency, community-based protocol and policies for the criminal justice system and advocacy programs in dealing effectively with domestic violence. Because again, this violence has to stop for women to move forward. They don't have to live with this threat and reality every day of men's violence against women. Then we need to support organizational practice and public policy change. Because these are also, we're talking about hierarchy, and we're talking a lot about grassroots, and that is very important to inform the top how best to make the changes that they're declaring need to be changed. And then at the top, who are making the laws and the policies and practices, that has to change too, so that those people on the bottom are affected by those policies and procedures and protocols. And so we need to make public policy changes to ensure that women are equally represented in leadership and decision-making process. This has to be in writing. This has to be in protocols and organization policies at our work, and government laws and regulations, and in our community groups, just our simple community groups, or our faith communities, or our educational systems. These have to be written protocols that are really clearly defined about women's equality, and that women need to be 50% of those in the decision-making process instead of 26 or whatever it might be, right? And then once we have those policies and protocols in place, we have to track and monitor them. That's one thing I like about the SDG agenda and goals, is they have a lot about tracking and monitoring and policy change. And so we have to track and monitor, because it's really easy to have a policy, and then you create a policy and then you just put it up on the shelf and then do nothing. Nothing changes. What makes that change is that you track and monitor the implementation of those policies and practices and the effectiveness. And then, because you're working at grassroots level and you're working with those who are most impacted by this discrimination and oppression and violence, then you start to see the gaps and you understand the gaps because you're working with those people who are most impacted to tell you what the gaps are. And then you go to the higher level, you say, we have to change this, we have to change this, and we have to change that. And then you continue to track it and monitor it to make sure that it is happening and how effective it is. Tracking and monitoring is a key point in any of these policies and protocols that we develop. And then lastly, I'll say that men need to stand up in partnership with women, not coming in and going to save women. No, in partnership with women, listening to women, taking women's leadership. We have to stand up and use our social male privilege and our entitlement that we have and our personal influence to support women's empowerment and advancement in government and our workplace, right? So the advancement, somebody's going to get the next advancement to supervisory role. How often do we talk to our colleagues and say, no, she was really good, she should have that role? We need to do that more and more and more. Government, educational systems, who's the principals, faith communities, who's the head of these faith communities, how much women are involved in the decision-making process in faith communities, community groups, and with family and friends. So guys, as we're just kind of hanging around making jokes about women and their bodies and what we like to do with them and you know, always degrading women, then we have to stop that. And we have to confront that with our friends and our family members. And we have to start honoring women and respecting women. And so we need to use our voices and we need to take action to end men's violence and support women's equality in all aspects of society, because men's silence supports men's violence and the oppression of women. If all the men who are not beating and raping women stood up and said no, it would stop. But again, violence is the foundation of oppression. So why are so many men quiet about it? And why are so many men not want to have women have equal access to power in government and in business and in our faith communities? Why is that, guys? You have to ask yourself that question because it's a critical question. Is how do I benefit from this oppression that women suffer from? And do I care about women's lives? Am I willing to change? Am I willing to give the benefits up? Because I'm gonna have to give some stuff up. If women are equal with men, I'm gonna have to give some stuff up. Am I willing to do that because I care about women's lives? That's a question.
Wow,
Wow, Chuck, I love everything you said, everything that you said.
This is why Chuck is always, whenever I call Chuck and Chuck say yes, Franco, it's like Christmas for me because
Franco, I have to call him Chuck
he
more.
takes it to grassroots, right? So Chuck, you talk about
absolutely right.
Victim safety and offender accountability. Those are very important, right?
Yes. Critical.
Understanding the social male privilege and how much of it are we willing to give up in order to support our women. That will be a key transformative point if we want to talk about women in representation in political life and in public life. That is so key. But Ms. Thesisia, you agree with me that during the pandemic in Texas here, what happened? The number of people buying guns in Texas increased during the pandemic, which means that domestic violence victims also increased and victims were more at risk because they were trapped with the offenders in one spot. So while the lockdown helped to stop the spread of COVID, on the other hand, it also penetrated and gave more room for domestic violence. So Ms. Thesisia, how do you think women in public and policy making, how would that go a long way to improve and galvanize action towards attaining the 2030 agenda?
Wow, that's a lot. And so many things have been said. I'm going to say that, Chuck, you are my brother from another mother. I actually had made notes and you pretty much touched on every last one of them. So here's the thing, we are all walking in agreement today. Yes, Franco, definitely, I think not only here in Houston, Texas, and all over the world, the pandemic definitely increased, or should we say that, yeah, it increased domestic violence, or increased the awareness about domestic violence. And it did create an environment where the violence exacerbated. Wow, trying to get all my thoughts together here. I'm looking at my timer and make sure I can get all this in 2 minutes. Sticking to the key question here around leadership. And before I answer that, I do want to say this. According to the Texas Council on Family Violence, in 2020, there were, I believe, 228 homicides related to domestic violence. 65% a firearm was used. And it would be interesting to know what that looks like on an international basis. I believe that maybe the dynamics of homicide, femicide may look different abroad. So that would be very interesting to have that kind of information. So we'll set that there. Moving that forward and talking about leadership, you know, what came up for me, number one, is when Chuck talked about accountability. And one of the points that I had here on my notes was the enforcement of laws related to gender-based violence. Here's the thing, we're getting ready to gear up for the 88th legislative session here in Texas in 2023. And so I'm actually missing that call today as a part of being a part of this call. And the topic today was firearms.
Wow.
However, along those lines, that, you know, I believe that we can have all the legislation in the world, we can have all the sustainable development goals. However, if there is not accountability, I think so very often that we as a people on an international basis is that we get excited about setting goals just so that we can say we set goals, but the accountability piece is key. And that has been the conversation over and over on these conversations that we've had preparing for the legislative session we have coming here in Texas. So accountability is key. So I would love to see a whole nother session on what can we do to hold people accountable? Because I think we've got plenty of laws in place. We're just not holding people accountable for those laws, okay? That part. And then talking about making sure that women are in key leadership roles. Again, speaking to what Chuck said, putting a comma and, that when we think about leaders, even though in this country, our vice president is a woman. We've just seen, and both of them women of color. We have our vice president. We now have, you know, a justice. However, then looking from a global perspective, when we hear the word leader, it would be interesting to know what comes up when people close their eyes when you hear the word leader. I believe for most people that we conjure up a male image. So we have to begin to have a mindset shift about what is a leader? Who is a leader? What are the characteristics of a leader? And I want to kind of, in talking about that, asking ourselves, what role does trauma play in a person's ability to become a leader? Knowing that predominantly when we talk about the things that set barriers for women and girls even stepping into leadership is, again, going back to what Chuck talked about, 1 in 3 women will experience domestic sexual violence, correct? So that's about 33% of women on an international basis globally. What does that trauma do to a person's ability to even see themselves as a leader? Because in order to be a leader, you must see yourself. And if you see yourself as a victim, if you see yourself as second class, how then do you show up and be a leader? So it even starts with, again, holding people accountable for the laws that are already in place when it comes to domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. We've got to start holding people and nations accountable for the violence against women, because when we do not hold people accountable, we then produce another generation of women who do not see themselves as leaders, do not see themselves as overcomers because of the violence that they have been, that has happened to them and the traumatic effect, okay? And then going back again, putting a comma and, what Chuck said, and I'm going to wrap it up because I can talk, is, again, this goes back to that accountability piece, is that, you know, I believe here in this country and, you know, and then I'd have to ask about abroad, that we have these different initiatives about wanting to have people of color, women in positions, but do we really hold people accountable for that? Do we have systems in place? And asking on a global level, are there incubators specifically for women? I have an associate in Accra, Ghana, and I know that he is doing some work around creating incubators for women in entrepreneurship. And I remember him having us having a conversation, and this goes back again to the trauma that so many women carry in their backpack. That he talked about how so many times that when he is talking to women entrepreneurs, that they have such a hard time promoting themselves. And I will be transparent and say, even I, I sometimes have a hard time promoting myself because of a backpack, because I am that 1 in 3 woman.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay, and
wonderful.
so do we have initiatives in place that deal and help and groom girls and women to even take on the mindset of leadership, and also in partnership with our male allies, for them also, when they hear the word leader, that not so much about male or female, but thinking about the characteristics of who a leader is. So I'll stop there.
Wonderful, wonderful, Ms. Thesisia. Wonderful, Ms. Thesisia. I think you hit home the point, Ms. Thesisia. You talked about the problem is not the lack of laws. The problem is enforceability. How do we enforce these laws? And it goes back to what Chuck talked about, victim safety and offender accountability. I think, Ms. Thesisia, we should have a next talk just focused on accountability. Because if we are not accountable, then we are not building anything, no matter what we do. No matter, we can have 1 million sustainable development goals. If we are not accountable, we're not going anywhere. Wonderful. That's wonderful.
And also, if we're not changing the mindset of what a leader is and what a leader looks like, then we're wasting our time.
Wonderful.
Because we need to have a mindset change.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I admire the work from Tayong Center for Leadership and Development. I know Mr. Tayong, he left the United States, went back home with a primary focus, not just to teach, but first of all, to change the mindset, because it's important. If you don't change the mind, no matter what you teach, it will not get in. The first thing is mindset transformation, and then we can learn. But we cannot learn with the same mindset. That's wonderful. So, Peter, before I come to you, let me have Ms. Goretti talk about this issue of, how can we make sure that women have equal opportunities for leadership in decision making? How can this help us build back after the pandemic, Goretti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will just be piggybacking on what Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Derry have said.
Wow.
Mentorship is very important. But before we even get to mentorship, again, I'm always looking at the grassroots, what's happening at the grassroots, the conversation around leadership and the conversation around putting women in decision-making positions can be very sensitive, especially if you're an African, especially within I'll bring it down to Cameroon, what I know as a Cameroonian, typically women are not the leaders. Typically women are not in positions of decision making. I hear that in the past, so many years ago, that was the case. And I'm hoping that in the future that we will be able to get our women there. But how do we change? Again, like you're saying about Mr. Tayonsko and everyone else is saying, how do we change the mindset? How do we get the men to understand that if we do put the women in positions of leadership, it doesn't threaten patriarchy. It doesn't threaten their place in society. It is just, again, like the proverb, the woman is the neck and the man is the head. It is just that the woman is coming to the position of being, she's the head, but she's not taking your position. We need to frame the conversation, the language around leadership in a way that we form allies. We get allies from the male counterparts, so that there is no threat. If we can achieve that, then we are now in a better place to say that, okay, so the women are moving towards leadership. That is great. Now, where do they find representation? And that's where mentorship comes in. Who are the women that are already in positions of leadership, and how do they? Africa is still very much about respect, about culture. So in the cultural context of it, how do these leaders carry themselves? Do they carry themselves in a way that the young mother would tell her girl, I want you to be like that girl. I want you to be like that woman who is the CEO of, who is in the C-suite. So within our context, I think that again, it really needs to be leadership and decision making. It is possible. We have seen it again. I'll bring Rwanda into the picture. After the war, after the genocide, what happened? Most of the men were killed. 60% of the population was women. And when President Kagame came in, what did he do? He became an ally. So he in 2003, he passed a law that 30% of the seats in parliament must be reserved for women. And so what has that done? That has made women strive to get to that positions of leadership. And there is that almost gender parity in Rwanda. This is where governments policies can come in as allyship in this whole conversation on SDG 5 to help the women to get to that position. So again, it's twofold. We're talking mentorship, we're talking allyship, but we're talking contextually and making sure that we are addressing, we're not threatening the patriarchy, but we're working alongside the patriarchy to achieve that.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Exactly,
wonderful. That's a great perspective there. That's a great. Lady B, any word?
I was going to say, I totally agree with her. We're not here to compete with men. That is not what gender equality is about. It's not a competition. We just want recognition for equal pay, equal justice, and everything that's owed equally to a woman. So you're absolutely right. We're not here to take over as a leader. We're just here to work alongside the men, right? And that is what we have to get the understanding to be. So thank you so much for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm going to go back now to our keynote speaker, Mr. Peter.
Could I ask everyone to mute your mic if you're not speaking? So if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, Mr. Peter, before the pandemic, the heavily indebted poor countries were already dealing with a lot of debt issues. The pandemic came, it made it worse because these countries now had to borrow more in order to sustain their GDPs. They had to borrow more to sustain their payroll. Therefore, and then production declined. So putting these countries in a more difficult situation. Debt in heavily indebted poor countries is one of the main issues facing third world countries after the pandemic. What do you think could be a possible solution in terms of debt financing, debt restructuring, and in terms of increasing GDP? What could be done from the West to the developing countries in order that these poor, heavily indebted poor countries could revamp and grow back from the pandemic?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Before I come to your question, let me drift a little bit go back to leadership issues, because it has to be clear. We have to make it very clear, and I've been teaching this subject for over 10 years. There is nothing like women leadership in the whole world, except like there's nothing like men leadership in the whole world. You know, you talk of women in authority, I will understand. Women want authority, but leadership is earned. Leadership is earned by everyone, and leaders emerge. So let us get it very clear. You cannot appoint people to leadership. You emerge, you earn it. That said, let us stop this whole idea of women not being in leadership. Every one of us is capable of earning their leadership by being credible, by having the right character, by building on trust and getting influence. The whole concept of leadership is about influencing change. So wherever you can be to influence change, you are a leader. So this whole concept of women always feeling that they don't have, I would like them to say they don't have authority. And that is more important. Yes.
Wonderful.
There's a huge difference between being in authority and being in leadership. And there's nothing, I repeat it again, in this world called women leadership, called men leadership. And as we'll start talking about children leadership, animals leadership, it doesn't exist. So let our women understand that they are already in leadership if they start influencing. And influencing is a self-thing, because it comes from your character, it goes to your competence, then it gives you credibility, then it gives you trust, and trust earns you influence. Influence causes people to follow you. So we've seen very strong women with influence in the world who were followed because people love them. Winnie Mandela was one of them. So let's not mix things up. I think even on this panel, we've got very strong women who just need to build their self-esteem, build their self-confidence to lead. Leadership is not a position. It's your ability to
must
change
really
ideas into
understand
action.
that it's very hard for a woman to get into a leadership role. Yes, the woman could stand and be as qualified as a man, but in the end, that leadership role and position will be given to a man. It is history. We've known it. We've seen it time and time again. We know we are leaders. I know I'm a very, very strong woman leader, but at the end of the day, I've been in position where the leadership position role would be given to a man. And this is what we are fighting about, equality as leaders, not women or men leaders, but just leaders, period.
Madam, let me help you a little bit. It's about the goal, not about the rule. Full stop, whether you're a man or a woman. It's about what you can make, the ability to change ideas to action. Now, answer your question.
Can I interject something here? Quick?
Yes, go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead, Chuck.
Go ahead, Chuck.
So as a middle-class privileged white man who's worked in feminist organizations since 1983 and was lucky to work with women who would challenge me, debate me, even willing to get angry with me, rather than just blow me off. I learned so many things about privilege, male privilege, the privilege I had, because my compassion immediately came in conflict with my benefits. And my willing to give up my benefits is my compassion override the benefits and the privilege I have. So the context of leadership, as I agree with what you're saying, Lady B, is in the context of a sexist culture, which is global. It's the same thing as a white guy. I have all kinds of privilege. In America, a person of color, I don't have to compete with men of color or women of color or women generally. Now, if I have to start competing with them all, I'm not going to get the next advancement in my workplace, because right now I just got to compete with white guys. So am I willing to give that up even, to have that kind of equality, even though 1 in 3 women are being raped and beaten and don't have you make 60 to 80 cents on my dollar globally. So do I care about women's lives? And all these positions around leadership are, I think, cultural context and political context, social context. So I just wanted to say that as a privileged white guy.
Wonderful, Chuck. Chuck, thank you for bringing up perspective. Collins, we're going to get a minute from you, and after we get a minute from Goretti, and then we round up.
Thank you so much. I think I just have a quick one. Just like Mr. Peter said, I just wanted to make a little bit correction, of course, maybe ask him one question. Just like Mr. Peter said, there is nothing like women leadership. It's quite understandable. But then there is what we are seeing in the African setting, where we have high level of patriarchy. And this is a problem, where we set a system that doesn't favor women participation in leadership. So we are saying that there is nothing like women leadership, fine and good, but then we need to go back and work on the system, the ladder that will help them become leaders. We have to get it right from there, where everyone can participate equally without having any form of bias. That is when women leadership will work effectively. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Collins. Correct, let's hear from you. Thank you.
Everything Collins said, because I was going to say, Mr. Peter Ngutayo, you're talking like Mr. Berry said, from a place of privilege as a male, and I don't know, I don't understand the circles you've been in, and you're pushing that so that women take the authority. But like everyone else is saying, and I'm adding my voice to that, when as a woman, there are certain places where, when it comes to appointing leaders, like leaders, it automatically would go to the man. It doesn't matter how qualified you, the woman, are. We're often fighting to be heard or seen in those positions. So there are so many situations like that. So it's not a category thing to say that, yes, there's a difference between authority and leadership, and we do get that, but we are saying this from experience, and we know how it affects us, is all I'm saying. Sorry, I'm done. I can't hear anyone.
Oh, okay. No, thank you. I think Franco is frozen. Are you there, Franco? I think he's having a problem with his internet, and I think he is gone. So we're going to move on, and now because we are over time, and we definitely have to wrap up. But I definitely want to deal with SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals, and which we feel is the most important SDG. We should really, really have a discussion on that. So if someone or anyone wants to take about a minute and go into SDG, we'll have an open discussion about that before we wrap up. So if anyone wants to talk about partnership for the goal, the benefits of it, how we could use partnership, SDG number 17, to implement the goals and to advance the goals, the floor is open. Okay, Chuck, would you like to go first? You're muted. Everyone is muted.
Well, I really like the conversations about the exports and the economy and what are the international laws and regulations around exports and the possibility for development in underdeveloped countries or developing countries. And so I think a lot of the SDG is a great job of addressing these things. And again, how do we implement them in our states and in our countries? And the economy makes a big piece of that. And I live in a capitalist country. And we're seeing more and more of the higher economic multinational companies wanting to take over our democracy. And so I have some concerns about that. And I think some regulation which equalizes this and the financial institutions internationally is a good idea and will assist those who are most harmed by these discriminations, financial discriminations. So that's my initial thoughts.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and so if we really look into that, we could definitely make a difference. So Colin, do you have any words on SDG 17, partnership for the goals?
Yeah, basically, when I was presenting when I was answering the first question, I said I had a model that I would want us to look into. And then if we can have a little bit of synergy, this particular thing will be achieved. Now, when I was talking about having technological advancement in rural communities in Africa, building a tech-based education process, I came to understand that SpaceX is trying to build a telecommunication company in Africa. Already they've gotten a leeway to start off from Nigeria. Now, wouldn't it be best for us as NGO, people from different NGOs to come together and make a little effort in having SpaceX to have their corporate social responsibility in one pattern? Now, what is the pattern I'm looking at? I'm looking at SpaceX giving data bundle, specific data bundle for a certain category of people. Let's say students will enjoy a specific data bundle. Now, this will help young people to access the internet easy, to access the internet freely, and of course, to help them in conducting their research easily. So can we, as representatives of different NGOs, come together and look into this matter? We can write to SpaceX, tell them to look towards this part of corporate social responsibility, build a data specifically for students. And of course, it has to be affordable, it has to be sustainable, and it has to have strength. It has to have wider coverage. When we do this, we don't just solve the problem of education, we help to bring more young persons in Africa closer to standard education. Research will be carried out effectively. Young people will gain smart and intelligent aspects of learning. So I feel this can work. And of course, if we can do this, I'll be so glad to work with any organization that is willing to go this mile. SpaceX is coming. We can't write to MTN because they have already had their contract signed with different countries. We can't write to Orange, we can't write to Global. So long as SpaceX is coming in, we can push this forward, tip them a little about the importance of having young people study faster in Africa. We can do this. Thank you.
Yes,
This
and
is just my submission.
it's being done. It's being done here in the U.S. AT&T provides free internet to low-income families, so it can be done. It's already being done here. So AT&T goes to school, and anyone signs up for the program, and they're low income, and they have the internet service in their homes. So it's something that's already implemented, and it could definitely be implemented in Africa. I see, Ms. Doris, you had your hands up. Go ahead, 1 minute. We are already over time. So we're going to try to get everyone in for 1 minute, and then we're going to wrap up. Go ahead, Ms. Doris.
Yeah, okay, on the issue of partnership, again, I think that it's very, very crucial at this stage for us if we really want to get the SDGs implemented in the grassroots. And that's something that at Royalty World we are already working on, and giving people a platform to contribute to different goals. I think already talked a lot about childcare for women within the community, and that's something that we started working on. And it would be a great idea to see that organizations that are keen on specific areas of intervention or specific goals can partner with local civil society organizations like ourselves that are on the ground to see how we can be able to get the local person, that's the community leader, involved in this. Because if not, as we say, it's going to be something that stays in New York. I'm sure that the community woman down there in Bolifama, where I work, doesn't know anything about the SDGs. But I believe if we come together, we can build stronger forces to work with people in the grassroots who are the people who are most affected by poverty, which is the situation we're trying to solve by 2030. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
The fact that poverty and partnership is important.
Thank you. I have Mrs. Goretti and then Ms. Jenkins, and then we're going to wrap up with Mr. Peter for the final words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a very learning experience for me, and I'm really inspired and motivated by you all. As a filmmaker and having taken the time to learn about sustainable development, I understand the value that filmmaking has on bringing awareness to things like the SDGs. And like Doris is saying, the average woman the average person, sorry, I should stop saying woman, the average person in Bolifamba, where she works, probably has no idea about what the SDGs does, and so, or what the SDGs is about. And so what my role is as a filmmaker is to tell the story of the SDGs in a way that is understood by that local person and even the diaspora or Africans all over the world. And so again, I'll continue to learn, and pass that message across. But we are about 8 years to the end of the decade of action, and it's really action time. And I hope that when we leave this place, we shall all make our contributions. I'm filming in the US in a few weeks, and in that story, I made sure to write about different aspects of the SDG goals. So I think I've dealt with at least 3 of the SDG goals in that story. And so that's my contribution. And I hope that we all take some form of action and we continue to create awareness on the SDGs in our different spheres. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your input. Which part of the US will you be?
Maryland.
Maryland. Oh, I might meet you in Maryland. Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, any last words before Mr. Peter wraps up?
Thank you, Lady B. So I will, my comma and is, I think that collaboration is key with all global partners. And also, you know, my husband is actually in West Africa, and we have a lot of conversations when it comes to economics and debt and things of that nature. One thing I want to bring to the conversation is I have an associate there in Ghana, Mr. James Addison, and I'm just going to do a plug for him. He does work around emotional intelligence. and I'm also a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. And I bring this to the conversation when we talk about debt and how countries handle money. And when I say countries, I mean the United States and all countries abroad. And that I believe, and this goes back to, I think, what maybe Doris may have said, Mr. Collins may have said about the educational system needing to change and it not just being about rote education, people memorizing information, but actually being engaged. And to bring up the topic of emotional intelligence. And one of those things around emotional intelligence is looking at, I think Mr. Peter may have talked about this, about character. And so hear my heart when I say this, is that looking at the financial infrastructure, and I'm only talking as an outsider, and I recognize that, is how money is actually utilized within a government. And I hope everybody's hearing my heart. And adding that whole idea of integrity and adding about giving opportunities to people based on what they bring as opposed to maybe other factors. To me, and as an outsider, and I recognize that, so I know my place, but having those types of conversations, and maybe I'm not being clear, however, I think that is one way for sustainable, for the sustainable goals, is really looking at infrastructures, whether it's here or whether it's abroad, and looking at the people who have been entrusted to oversee those financial structures, and having conversations around integrity, having conversations about making sure that everyone has a seat at the table and not just a selected few.
Right,
I'm
right.
done.
And you know what they say, if they don't give you a seat, bring your own chair and then have a seat. So Franco is Dr. Franco. We are dealing with SDG number 17, and Mr. Peter had just a little on 74 wrap up. So after Mr. Peter has 1 minute, then I'll come to Franco, and then Franco will wrap up for us today. You have the floor, Mr. Peter.
I want just to thank everyone for including me in this kind of conversation. I've learned a lot. I've listened keenly to everyone here has made a wonderful conversation, and we need to move this conversation out of Zoom meeting into the real ground and get more voices in the game, because there's so much Chuck said, which I really enjoyed. How I wish many people listen to him in Africa. I thought Chuck made some strong statements which we African men need to listen to. I also listened to the other colleagues, like my brother and friend Collins from Nigeria. What he said, we need to just get down on the ground and put them, instead of having this kind of conversations every day, we should move into practice. And I don't know how this can happen, but we should get more voices in the game. We need to get more voices in the game, because the more the voices, the better for every one of you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting every one of you.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. We definitely appreciate your input, and we are definitely looking to share and share and share. This is being recorded live on Bright Light Project's Facebook page. So it doesn't just end here. It's going to be continuing. Just share and share and share. Franco, are you there? Franco, are you there? I want you to give the last word before we wrap up. Hello, Franco. I really don't want to close without the host of the executive director of Bright Light in the last words. It would be so inappropriate. So I'm hoping that he could pop in. If everyone share each other information, we could definitely keep in touch. I'll be putting some information about doing the voluntary reporting for the SDGs, so your voice could be heard. Okay, Franco, I see you. Are you back, please? We can't hear you. Franco? Keep trying, Franco.
Yes, let it be.
Ah, there you are. Are you okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's up to you to wrap up. Thank you so much.
Let's see.
Go ahead. We hear you, Franco.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I apologize for all the my internet problems today, but thank God this has been one of the most successful debates I've had in a very long time. Despite the challenge, they say there's always a storm before a rainbow. So despite the challenges, it's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I want to thank everyone. Please make sure to share your email so we can continue to network. Part of the SDGs.
Please share it in the WhatsApp group, because if you share it here, once the program is ended, unless you save the chat, you won't have the information. So if you share it in the WhatsApp group, it would be wonderful.
Wonderful, because part of the SDG, SDG 17 is about partnership. It's about networking. Until we can network, until the child in New York can network with the child in Calabar, the child in Calabar may not understand what is it to be online. So we need to network, and this part of it has been a wonderful event. United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. I think this recording will go a long way because we'll be submitting this to the United Nations. And so this will be part, and after this, we'll do a white paper based on our recommendations, and this will be included into the global solutions on sustainable development review moving forward. So this has been a great privilege having all of you. So please, if we can just 30-second close out. 30-second close out. Let's start with Mr. Chalk.
It's been an honor, and I really thank all of you for all your work and your commitment to this justice. So thank you very much. It's been amazing to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful job. Wonderful. Always a pleasure, Chuck. Let's move over to Collins from Calabar. Collins.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm most delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Goretti, all the way from London. Goretti.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And I hope we continue to stay in touch. Thank you.
And please don't shy next time when I call you people for more conversation, because the more we do this, the more the UN is valuing our inputs and the more they want to hear from us. Because this one was because we did one in December on the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So on this one, that's why they call up us on this one. So this one will build up to another one, right? So thank you so much. And Ms. Thesisia, let's hear from you.
Mr. Franco, thank you so very much for the invitation. This has been extremely enlightening, and again, just very appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And thanks again for always coming each time we call you up. Miss Doris, all the way from Cameroon.
Thank you so much. Amazing to reconnect with wonderful people. Amazing to connect with Goretti, especially my schoolmates. Yeah, so it's been a privilege meeting you all. Partnership is key to what we are doing, and it's amazing to connect. Thank you so much, Franco, for inviting me.
No problem, Dad, no problem. And our keynote speaker, Mr. Peter Ngutayon.
I just coming back to say thanks very much for including me. Yeah, I feel very elated. I would look forward to other opportunities to share my thinking on the different topics you'll be coming up with. Thanks, everyone. It was nice meeting you guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tayon. Thank you so much, Mr. Tayon. And my partner in crime, let it be blessed. The most African of the Caribbean. Let it be blessed. Is she with us?
I was muted. I'm so sorry. I was saying I wasn't born in Africa.
Yeah, born in Africa. Africa was born in you.
Yes, I've enjoyed this kind of discussion, and there's more to come. So let's keep in touch. Women's Day is coming up, International African Wednesday, July 31st. It's July 30th coming up. So definitely let's keep in touch. We could do more about the SDGs and effectively employing them around the world. So thank everyone for joining us here today.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Lady B. Thank you so much. We often say development has a trickle-up effect. Until we empower the local incubators, the local entrepreneurs who are the ecosystem builders, who feed the city, because the rural woman feeds the city with food, they feed the city with services, with cleaning services and everything. Until we look at the sustainable development goals at the rural level, we'll be making a big mistake. It will become, like Peter said, every year we go to the United Nations General Assembly and we talk about the progress of the goals when the women in the village don't even understand what these goals are. This was a great opportunity. All of our recommendations we will put forward in a white paper, and we'll be forwarding that to the high-level political forum of sustainable development to be included as part of their recommendations in moving forward. It was live. Let it be blessed. Thank you so much, our always best partner. And this was championed by Bright Light Projects. And we hope to meet you again next time on a different topic. Let's build together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone a great day.
Thank you.
Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Great.